So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Black History Month presentation at Tri-C. This session, we're grateful to have Crystal Bryant, who's CEO of the NAACP Cleveland chapter, and we're thankful for her for presenting today. This presentation is brought to you by the Black American Council, the Black Caucus, the Stand for Racial Justice Alliance, as well as the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. We ask this, customarily, we ask that you all remain muted during the session, but we welcome comments and questions via the chat. So please do so. And of course, once Ms. Bryant is done with her presentation, she will open it up for a Q&A session. So let's introduce our speaker today. So Crystal Bryant is an East Cleveland native, and she is the executive director for the Cleveland branch of the NAACP. Crystal prides herself in working hard and boldly stepping into work that others may stray from. Crystal has a license in law and social work, which gives her a unique set of professional experiences that have helped to shape her career. Her diverse professional and community endeavors include law, advocacy, education, training, and civic engagement. Crystal has, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, she's well prepared for this role. She has worked as drug case manager, aiding those who have been charged with the first-time drug offense in obtaining a clean and sober life. She's been adult program specialist at the Cuyahoga County Adams Board, which is the Alcohol, Drug, Addiction, Mental Health Services Board. She's been assistant prosecuting attorney for the city of Cleveland, and also director for the Cuyahoga County Office of Reentry. Crystal has a passion for serving those involved in the unjust justice system, with the belief that everyone deserves a second chance. She believes firmly in the quote by the great Angela Davis, "I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am changing the things I cannot accept." Crystal is also the co-founder of Cleveland Votes, which works in partnership with community organizations to build and strengthen year-round civic muscle. With you, Crystal Bryant.
Thank you, Magda. So it's really an honor to be here with you guys during Black History Month. It's unfortunate that everything is in a virtual space because I have a lot more fun engaging people and picking on them and being all in their face when we have the ability to be in community with each other. But we'll do the best we can from a computer screen. I will go off camera. I'll utilize a PowerPoint presentation for today's discussion. And just so you know, I probably could keep my camera on, but I easily get distracted. I always want to know which way my eyes are going. So I have to take the camera off of me or you'll be like, what is she talking about? Girl, follow the PowerPoint. So that is why I will go off. We'll talk a little bit about the history of the NAACP and its inception, how it is structured, where we are today, and what we're working on in terms of having a proactive approach, and then ultimately how you can get engaged should you be interested. I hope that the quote from Angela Davis resonated with you all. There is so much that we cannot afford to continue to accept. So you as students, you as educators have the power to do it. You are our future, and none of these organizations exist without a bridge into our youth. So you're never too young to get active. Please note that some of the greatest civil rights leaders were doing this stuff when they were in their late 20s and 30s. Dr. King wasn't 50, wasn't 60, it's 20-something and 30-year-old, folk out there on a path blazing a trail. So with that, I'm going to make an effort to share this PowerPoint. I am not that tech savvy, so no one judge me. I need grace and mercy. And we'll get started. All right, can you all see PowerPoint screen? All right, now I need to figure out how am I getting through this. All right, do I just click enter when I want to go to the next slide, Magda? Is that how this one works?
Yeah, you could use your arrow buttons.
Okay.
Make sure you click on the PowerPoint icon before doing that.
Let's see. It says I'm sharing my screen. What?
You may be sharing your screen and not the actual PowerPoint presentation. So you might want to unshare and go back and find, oh no, you're doing it. It's
Okay,
working.
cool. All right, finally. All right, sorry guys. I told you, tech savvy is not my thing. All right. So, the first thing I want to be able to share with you all is that the NAACP, through its inception, has always been an organization that is led by its volunteer members. Without its members, there is no association. Our president currently is Danielle Sitnor. Danielle serves as the 35th president of the Cleveland branch of the NAACP. She's the fourth woman to ever hold this title. Danielle works at minimum 25 hours a week to the NAACP. And the reason why that becomes so significant is because Danielle is not paid. I would love to see you all spaces right now. Mic drop, mouth open. Danielle gets no stipend and no money for the role that she plays in the NAACP. And so the reason why that is so important, Danielle will transition from us at the end of June. She has to step out of her role. This is an elected seat that she is in, and we will have our first VP step up to end her term. We'll have elections in December where we will be looking for our next president. I just want you to remember again, you're never too young to serve in this capacity. But what you do have to have is a passion for your people, a passion for service. You have to be selfless because this is tireless work. And it cannot exist without its members, its president, and the work that we all do collectively. So I think Magda gave me a wonderful introduction. We've also had a multitude of executive directors. The last executive director before myself was Sheila Wright, who is an amazing advocate and currently serves as our economic development chair. There's been a vacancy in between the time in which Sheila served and I now serve in this capacity of 5 years. Before Sheila, a lot of you all may be familiar with the late Stanley Miller, who was an amazing advocate who served in multiple positions, and his last one was executive director for our Cleveland branch of the NAACP. You may want to know, well, if you have a president, what exactly does the executive director do of the Cleveland branch? So it's important to also share with you, even though the bylaws permits that every unit be allowed to have an executive director, every unit doesn't have one. The executive director is a staff member. I am a paid staff member. And unfortunately, throughout the years, every NAACP is not built the same. So some units are able to fundraise enough to provide a staff member, where others are not. We are fortunate to be able to have the resources to have me in this capacity. And so the difference between Danielle and I role, Danielle is the face of the organization. You'll likely see her speaking a lot in media. You'll see her being at the front of the line with a bullhorn when we need to do some reactive work in regards to marches and demands. But I am here in the background to create operations and ensure that things get done, executed, and have its greatest impact, and also offer what I call a proactive approach to how we eradicate racism, which I'll talk a little bit more about during the middle of the presentation. And so that is the sheer difference between our role, but ultimately we're here to have a meeting of the minds to kind of collectively work together to cultivate the greatest impact for those who are ultimately disenfranchised. So what's the purpose of the NAACP? So I'm not going to read this statement because I can share the PowerPoint with Magda after this presentation is finished for those who are interested in reflecting and taking a look on it. But I will kind of break down for you just a short version. And so ultimately, we exist for no other reason than to eradicate racism. And you may believe that after 113 years of existence, it is no longer relevant. But if you were in my skin, then you know that is simply just not true. And we do so in 4 methods. We do so through political action, direct action, indirect action, and litigation. So we have 18 committees that work to eradicate racism with those 4 different methods that I just talked about. Our committees serve in different facets, but ultimately they exist in a systemic fashion. So we have committees ranging from environmental justice to health to criminal justice to political action on down. Every system that you can think of where the racism may exist, we have a committee to address that issue head on, utilizing those 4 methods of work. At a national level, my apologies, we have a federal NAACP, right? And so those are the ones that tackle and challenge some of the federal issues you see, whether it's coming from the Biden or Trump or whomever the presidential candidate is, administration. And then we have a state conference. And at the state level, those are the folk who generally are looking at statewide throughout the state of Ohio. Is the General Assembly making it more difficult, or a state constitution unfair in some capacity that needs to be challenged? And then lastly, you have our various units. We call them branches and or units. There are over 1,200 units that exist across the United States of America. Cleveland is the largest unit within the state of Ohio. And when I talk a little bit about history, you'll hear me kind of mention and discuss where we used to be in terms of numbers versus where we are today. So right now we have a membership of about 1,500 folk that are here to, serve in a space to eradicate racism throughout the multitude of systems. And that could sound like a lot, and it could sound like, well, okay, that's great, you're doing all right. Cleveland's the biggest branch. But when I talk about the historical perspective and what it used to be, you'll see why we have a call to action and why we need you. So history, here's where I'm going to read to you a little bit. And I was sharing with the staff before you guys got on. I hate reading, but it's really important that I read this to you, because if I try to give you the facts off the top of my head, I am no doubt going to botch this. All right, so here it goes. I'll try to go slow, but a nice enough pace where you guys can hear me. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the Cleveland branch, is an interracial organization formed to fight discrimination against African Americans. It was established December 12th, 1912, 3 years after the creation of the national organization. Local supporters of the national movement include Charles Chestnut, Harry Smith. The Cleveland branch at one time was amongst the largest in the U.S. and remained an avid proponent of moderate tactics in the 1980s. The group was responsible for the 1976 decision by the U.S. Federal District Court that led to busing to end segregation in the Cleveland public schools. The Cleveland chapter was established in the home of Francis E. Young. That's Francis E. Young, who you see on the screen, by 21 people concerned about discrimination in the post office. A mass meeting attracted 200 members, but the financially unstable organization grew slowly, lacked a headquarters until 1922. Under the first three chairmen, the NAACP was mostly a discussion club. A renewed effort in 1922 attracted 1,600 people. Vigorous leaders such as Claiborne George and Harry E. Davis and Charles E. White drew action-oriented professionals and white-collar workers. Prior to 1927, Russell of the Karamu House was the only white member of the local NAACP board, but during the 30s and 40s, it added whites to attract more money and public support from the white community. Though it has somewhat middle-class emphasis, the Cleveland NAACP made a special effort to reach working-class backs through meetings held in mills and factories, and derived some 40% of its funds from dollar memberships presumably gathered from workers. After 1920, the local chapter successfully challenged exclusionary policies in theaters, restaurants, and other public facilities and stores, such as Higbee's, if you're old enough to remember, which is now Dillard's, that refused to allow Black women to try on clothing. In addition, the organization led the legal fight for fair housing in the suburbs and advocated for Blacks extradited to the South on trumped-up charges. By 1940, the branch was active enough to warrant a part-time secretary. By 1945, a full-time executive secretary was hired. With a paid professional staff, the organization took on more cases and actively recruited members and publicized its work. As a result, the branch had 10,000 members within a year, the sixth largest branch in the nation. The Cleveland NAACP of the 1940s and 50s was at the forefront of efforts to eliminate discrimination in our amusement parks and other public places, as well as housing, employment, and education. By the 1960s, NAACP tactics were labeled too conservative by many African Americans. For a time, the local group united with the other groups in United Freedom Movement and Operation Black Unity. Among the chapter's legal victories of the 1960s was the redistricting that led to the formation of the 21st Congressional District. The organization also challenged the building trades for their exclusionary policies. The local membership peaked in the 60s at 15,240 members and made it the largest branch in the country. In 1973, Cleveland was chosen as a site for NAACP's long-term battle against school segregation. The Cleveland chapter filed suit against the Cleveland Board of Education, which was found guilty of intentional segregation. In the 1980s, the NAACP tried to broaden public perceptions of its purpose, but ongoing problems in implementing the desegregation decision demanded most of its resources. In 1993, a local pastor, Benjamin Chavis, became the executive director of the national NAACP. The 28% membership increase from 93 to 94 was among the largest in the nation. The branch received an award from the National Office for Outstanding Recruitment, and so on. And so I'm going to read you the last paragraph of this history. The membership of the Cleveland chapter of the NAACP declined markedly in the last few years, reaching about 3,000 members in 2005, 85% of whom were the age of 50. As of 2009, the membership stood at about 2,500. George Forbes, the former president of the Cleveland City Council, served as president of the Cleveland chapter since 1992, earning the top honor bestowed by the organization, the Freedom Award. In 2009, Stanley Miller, a longtime member of the local NAACP board and public relations specialist, assumed the duties of executive director. In 2005, the offices of the Cleveland chapter were located at that time on Stokes Boulevard. So that's a long, rich history that we have. Sorry, I had to read it to you again, but again, it was really important to solidify some of the great things that the Cleveland chapter has done, being one of the oldest branches. It was also crucial for you all to hear the size of membership. We are only as strong as the body and the things that we do. And it's also even more important that you hear what the challenges have been over the years and why we sit at the number of members that we do today. So as you notice, the more things are visible, the more things that we're able to attack, the more we're able to galvanize new members and have a greater charge and greater impact for those that come behind us. This is legacy building work. None of us reserve the right to sit back and wait for the next generation to change something. Each generation is responsible for prioritizing something better for the next. So I showed you guys that that's Francis Young on the screen. And it's also kind of important for you all to know that like Cleveland was in the center of it all during the civil rights era. This particular picture has W.E.B. Du Bois in it, who was one of the founding members of the National NAACP. He's in the very front row with the hat in his lap. And that's actually a letter that Francis Young wrote to W.E. Du Bois, letting him know that the Cleveland branch supported him in something that he was proposing. I don't know how much you all know about W.E.B. Du Bois, but as a founding member, a lot in this history talked about how the NAACP chose to consistently recruit folk and how they focused on middle class folk. And as that happened, W.E.B. Du Bois was kind of against that methodology. He eventually left the NAACP and started the Niagara movement, but came back later on and then ultimately left again. And he actually retired and passed away in Ghana. He was a huge Pan-Africanist and a great man. So it's also kind of important to talk about how you attack racism, right? Because the isms throughout the years transform, especially when you have an organization as old as the NAACP. So, right, the Nationals are 113 years old. We are 110 years old this year. And so what you would face in 1909, 1913 doesn't look the same in 2022. But nevertheless, it still exists. So you'll notice that a bulk of the work that was done in the NAACP's heyday was really fought through litigation. And a lot of it was direct discrimination. If I'm blatantly stating you cannot come in here and change your clothes because you're a Black woman, I mean, there's nothing else to say, but you didn't let me come in and do something because I'm a Black woman. It was discrimination on its face. Whereas now, things are often done that are, semi-hitting. And you have to, or it has a disparate impact on minorities or Blacks. And so that's why it's kind of important to kind of break down at what level we address racism for you to have a better understanding. And also understanding that the NAACP takes on cases that are systemic in nature. So we're not necessarily serving individuals or groups, but if there is an individual that has a case that may support something that's systematic in nature, then we are able to kind of support and put our push behind them in litigation. But the bulk of the things that we do, the meat and potatoes of how the NAACP works now to make change, really comes from policy and practice change, which is also a big difference from the 1950s and 60s. So again, individuals and groups, interpersonal racism, we have communities. So you're looking at neighborhood zip codes, organizations and businesses, that they have discriminatory practices and policies that appear to be racially biased. If you have institutions, financial services, housing, healthcare, employment, education, and criminal justice, that has some disparate impacts in terms of the folk that are of the African-American community. I think the criminal justice one is probably the easiest one to point out. Looking at the 13th Amendment, what the mass incarceration has done to the Black community, and how that actually trickles down into other systems like financial services, housing, healthcare, and employment, as well as education. And then again, looking at things that are structural in nature, that are set out by our government itself, that this exists within the fabric of the United States, and also looking at things that often happen to us as a direct result of white dominant culture with just a lack of understanding of who we are. And so understanding that also helps you break down kind of the committee structure and where we are. So I talked about 18 committees, right? We're talking about volunteers trying to run 18 committees in different systems, but it's important that you know, after we make our ask later on, like, how does these committees kind of function and work? So if I was trying to sum it up, it would be one big umbrella with 3 big pieces of rain under it. So the first rain is like committees that directly support the branch in its work. So that would be like our communications committee and also our legal redress committee, which deals with the complaints that come in when folk feel like they have been violated or discriminated against. We also have committees that support priority populations. So we have a prison branch, we have a youth council, we have a committee dedicated to just college students, and we also have a WIN committee, which is dedicated to women. And then lastly, we have issue-based committees. So here's where we have political action, we have environmental justice, we have health, we have criminal justice, we have international affairs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is just a good image for those that are visual, because I know I've been talking a long time of real work. And this is one of our Juneteenth freedom walks, and you see President Sitnor right in the front with her bullhorn as we are marching to kind of recognize what this means for us as we move forward this year with Juneteenth. You know, one of the things we want to do is make sure or ensure that the Black community is not lost in a day that was created for the Black community. And so a lot of times things become popular and people capitalize, and everyone that capitalizes is everyone but us. So Danielle's kind of put together a group she's working with this year to ensure that if things happen for Juneteenth, there are things that come back, our dollar comes back and supports our own community. We can look at maybe finishing and completing our cultural gardens. There are spaces for Black entrepreneurs to be able to access income and support their businesses. So all that good stuff. So the way forward, I talked a little bit about in the beginning of the conversation, the difference between our roles. And so for me, again, the executive director is here to do 2 things. I'm here to create operations for the branch. I'm also here to create focused priorities. My apologies. And so in terms of focused priorities, we're looking at proactive solutions to how we handle the work, understanding the local issues and solutions, identifying and addressing root causes, developing metrics, creating greater impact. And so how do you do that? Some of the things that we'll focus on this calendar year that will be the first time we've ever done it, but it will continue moving forward, is we'll host a roundtable for the state of the Black diaspora. We'll have an economic development series that actually will kick off in April. We're working on a wealth building forum with Dollar Bank. We're also working in partnership with Cleveland State to create an accountability roundtable. So after the murder of George Floyd, I'm sure this is not new to the students or the faculty. You guys have seen many folk come up and talk about how they have now equity plans, or they've hired DEI and REI specialists. And what we know in the Black community is often when something is popular, it's an influx of support for the moment. But things that don't impact the majority often get lost. And so for all those DEI and REI professionals that's been hired, what have they been able to accomplish? For all those corporations with equity plans, we're interested in hearing, where's your equity plan today, and how can we support you with continued execution? Because this is legacy work, this is lifetime work. You can't create something over 400 years and break it down in 2. That's not how things work. But someone has to be an advocate and, you know, at the same time a thorn to ensure that it happens. And who better positioned than the NAACP to do so? We're also looking at the onboarding of some additional staff support. So in no way in any world can, 2 people and volunteer members who may have 10% or 5% of their time make the kind of impact that needs to happen here. And so we're looking at onboarding a independent contractor that supports the legal redress, which is the bread and butter of the work when people are having complaints or feeling slighted. We're also looking at having a communications person come in and support the work as well. Increased visibility is crucial, not just in terms of the work that we do or the programs or projects that we're offering, but also in terms of how we engage membership, and also in terms of how you all learn about information and understand what's happening to you on the ground, and policies and legislation is coming down the pipeline. that impacts all of us. And we're also looking at onboarding a policy person. And so the policy strategist would be responsible, again, for creating a policy agenda. Because right now, everything we do is reactive. Remember, we're talking about more of a proactive agenda. So we're having someone that will be able to evaluate at a local level things that we have on the books already and making an assessment of things we want to be able to tackle. Look at currently issue 24 and how we can support the team in operationalizing issue 24 in a way that works for the community as a whole. And then keeping an eye out on things that come down the pipeline, as well as building and creating things we'd like to see to support us in the eradicating of racism. And then all of it boils down to money. It would be lovely if I told you anything different, but it's just simply not true. Capacity requires funds. And I've seen many organizations and white-led organizations receive tons of money. But when it comes to Black folk, we always feel like we should be able to just snatch crumbs and that's enough. Well, that's not true. The goal of eradicating racism comes with a huge price tag. And there are two ways that we are able to support the NAACP in its structure. One is our Freedom Fund dinner, in which we fund, that's our largest fundraiser created by mandated by our bylaws. The other is membership. So the more members we have, the more money and resources that come into the branch, and it allows us to do more work because we have a larger budget. And then we do some grant writing, which is a little different from how things were executed in the past. Currently, my role is being funded by a grant. So here is actually a barcode if anyone is interested in joining the NAACP. It's a call to action for you to do so. So again, not only do we need your support to execute some of the work here, some of the 5 programs or projects that we talked about are all being led by me, myself, and I bring in volunteers and partners and members. All of our committees are led by volunteer members. And so if there's a committee you have an interest in, whether it's economic development, education, criminal justice, our prison branch, we also have some vacancies in terms of leadership. So if you would like to become a leader and you've never led anything before, maybe an opportune time, all you have to do is scan that barcode, pay your $30, and you tell us where you want to be, and there's plenty of work to do. And we love to place you where you see yourself fitting as a leader. And so here's a huge call to action for your support, because again, without your support, the organization simply does not exist. And those who live within our skin and have eyes can see the work is far from being done and over. So I'm going to stop sharing now, come back on screen with you guys. At least I think I am, not that good at technology. And see if we can, well, I guess I'll turn it back over to Magda and then see if we can open it up for any questions.
So I'm turning it over to my colleague, Jacques Smith, who's also part of organizing this fabulous event.
Hey, Jacques.
Hey, Crystal, hi. Thank you for being here with us today. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. So there has been some questions sent in. Also, we're asking for anyone to please utilize the chat to ask any questions or unmute once our questions are finished or answered. Let's start with the first one. Was there anything that surprised you when you became CEO of the nation's oldest, largest, and most widely recognized grassroots-based organization, civil rights organization?
Yeah. So one thing you guys will find, and hopefully it is not offensive to some people, I'm very transparent. I'm very honest. I come in with what I call a New York state of mind, because I believe lying to you all is like lying to the dentist. It helps no one. And so what I can tell you about coming in, like one of the surprises for me is the lack of organization and in full transparency, the fact that in some ways we're still in the same space we were in 110 years ago. If that makes sense for you, you would think that over the course of 110 years is some things that we would have approved and accomplished. And the reality is it hasn't been done because of our lack of organization as a collective, as people, as Black people, being willing to put our dollars into things that make sense to resource for ourselves, to not come in with a selfish agenda and only be concerned about what works for one versus what works for the whole, and for the lack of investment in prioritizing our education and our history and how important that is. So I think those things have kept us in a space where 110 years down the line, I shouldn't be struggling. I shouldn't tell you we only have 2 staff, because if you listen carefully to me read over that very long history, remember around the 40s, 50s, they were just talking about being able to get 1, and then finally they got 2. I shouldn't tell you in 2022, there's 2 staff still. Not if I have the role of eradicating racism. If that's my job to champion those things from all angles, we should be a lot further down the line. And to be quite honest, in my humble opinion, one of the reasons why we are not is because our failure collectively to come together and create one agenda, be of one sound mind, and put our resources where it's most important, and to really understand and hone in on our history, that sometimes just become, for whatever reason, not as important. But I love to talk a little bit more too about what happens at the History Center, that'll be revealed through you all's work as students.
Thank you. Thank you for your response. There was a question in the chat. That one student works full-time and attends Tri-C at night, Monday through Thursday. I believe Evelyn's asking, how can she work on the weekends? Is there anything she can do on the weekends to help to contribute?
Absolutely. So what you'll also find out here, again, because we're volunteer led, most of our members are working full time. We can only ask of you what you're able to give. And so if you join our committees, sometimes our chairs may not have availability until the evening, and they're meeting with folk from 6 to 8 in the evening. Sometimes they meet on weekends. I actually participate in the International Affairs Committee. Sometimes we meet on Sundays because that's the best day for that chair based off his work. There's always a place and a space for you. We are flexible. One of my favorite sayings is beggars cannot be choosy. But in addition to beggars not being choosy, just know that there's so much work. It's so plentiful. There's always flexibility, always options, and there's also opportunities to lead. So if this is something you want to get into, you're passionate about social justice, and you're looking for your first leadership opportunity, this may be grand for you, maybe right up your alley.
There's a question in Summer, noted that in your comments about the older demographic of the NAACP Cleveland members, how is the organization engaging young people and college students?
So this is an interesting question. To be honest, we are totally in a rebuilding phase. So I told you that we sat without an executive director for 5 years. Imagine what happens to any organization that doesn't have an executive director for 5 years. What happens? There is no operations. It simply doesn't exist. So Danielle can only do so much as president as a volunteer. And she's done a lot. She's been able to take the organization out of the black, out of the red, actually, out of a deficit. She's been able to fill a lot of vacancies, but things still occur and happen. And so with that being said, yeah, we are totally in a rebuilding phase. That particular committee is not filled. We're actually seeking leadership as we go. We're also going through professionally facilitated strategic planning phase right now. So we can identify what the priorities are for the organization, what the goals are. And the last piece of it is strategy building sessions for our individual committees, so they can outline for themselves and their leadership what they want to accomplish, and also understand operationally how do they train up their next leaders as they come in. So after each bunch, as folks transition out, how are we going to handle the new folks that come in? What do they need to know about operations, and how do they support the next generation of leaders?
And as far as youth, we have a question in the chat again from Lisa Netta asking, how does the Cleveland chapter engage the youth in the services offered, and a space for them to share their ideas and visions for change?
So 2 months ago, we actually just was able to fill the youth council seat. We have Jafari Jackson, who leads our youth council. And because we're in the strategic planning phase for that, they've held focus groups with the few students that we do have to talk about just that, so they can set their own strategies and priorities for how they want to move forward with the youth. Everything is new. So when I say this is an opportune time to get on board and not just come in and pick up someone else's goals, this is your time to be invested in what it is you want to create, but also operationalize it and move it. Therefore, there are no more excuses. There's no time to cry about what doesn't happen. You get in here, you roll up your sleeves, and you do it. That's why I get jobs that most people don't want, because most folk wouldn't have wanted this heavy burden of trying to figure out what do you do with a 110-year-old organization that's kind of been sitting flat for a while.
And again, in the chat, we have a question asking, you kind of talked about the responsibilities and things of a volunteer, but what is there any criteria to choose the volunteers, and what are the major expectations from them as responsibilities within NAACP?
Sure. Often we are looking for folk that are self-starters. They have great ideas, who actually have some level of experience or commitment in the type of committee that they're interested and invested in serving in, and they have time and capacity to actually operationalize things, and that are not afraid of working collectively with other folks, and who are lifelong learners. those are the type of people or individuals that we are looking for, because you have to be able to work in a collective. You won't always like what you come out with or the results you're going to produce, but if majority rules in a space and they feel strongly about it as a team, you still have to have the sense to be able to know, you know, sometimes you're a chief and sometimes you're Indian, and decide which one you are for the day.
And from a question that was sent in, what is the #1 civil rights issue Clevelanders are faced with today?
I think that the interesting thing is not only are we faced as an organization with some of the same issues we faced 100 years ago, some of the same legal issues are the same ones we've had 100 years ago. We are still facing voter suppression. I'm sure it's no secret to you all that we were, you know, trying to get the Voter Rights Act moved at a national level. They won't pass it. They came in the first 30 days and gave, you know, an anti-discrimination bill for Asians. We still don't have an anti-lynching bill. Clearly, mass incarceration and the wealth gap for Blacks are one of the two huge areas of our generation. Because I feel like we're the first generation as African Americans that's had the ability to touch and tap wealth in a way that our ancestors have not. But the wealth gap continues to grow. Everything in this capitalistic society is built off money. It makes the world go round. If we had our own, you wouldn't have to beg other folks to fund it. And you wouldn't have to have other folks set your agenda when they give you things, because we know better than anybody what we need. We have the proper leadership. What we don't have is the proper resources. Mass incarceration is huge. It really does directly impact every other system. So when you think about the type of policies that come down the pipeline from federal to state to local, as a direct result that bars people in the justice system, and we make up over 60% of those that are incarcerated, you really are just blocking Black people. It's another way to block Black people from opportunity. So if you can't even get a loan to start your business, for instance, because you had a past criminal history, then how are you supposed to be self-sufficient and create a level of wealth? If you have these misdemeanor tickets for marijuana that they won't go back retroactively and dismiss, but now marijuana is this huge business, who is often impacted by most things? It's us. And they do it through the criminal justice system, which penetrates every other system. It keeps us out. So I think that it's some of the same things that existed 100 years ago. Sometimes it looks a little bit different, and sometimes it don't. Sometimes it's blatantly on its face the exact same thing, like the voting rights. We just have to keep pushing and keep fighting.
Thank you. What is the best way to, another question that was sent in previously, what is the best way to teach our students about advocacy?
I think that's an interesting question, especially in 2022. Advocacy can look so many different ways. I think the best way to teach your student about advocacy is to teach them to have some level of self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and the ability to trust themselves in whatever way that they feel most comfortable. So I'm a loudmouth. I've never had a problem being a loudmouth, but that doesn't make me the best advocate, right? It just depends on what the room desires. So there's a space and a place for everyone. And there are some rooms who do better with folks who can post statistics, that knows policy. There are some rooms who are looking for the story, and the story moves people. There are some rooms that are looking for the data and the figures. There are some rooms where you are just utilizing technology and people are looking for education and information, sound bites, memes, right? And so it just depends on your room and figuring out in that ecosystem, where's your space. But every single one of you are capable of being advocates in your own right. So I think it's really important to teach a level of self-awareness so they understand best how they fit into the ecosystem, and to be courageous and just get out there and do. We got a chance to hear Fred Gray, who was like one of the attorneys in the civil rights movement that was a part of the NAACP that defended Rosa Parks, that defended Dr. King himself. He also defended some of the defendants in the syphilis movement when they were injecting Black people with syphilis. He went to case here because in Alabama at the time, they didn't allow Black people to go to law school. And we were fortunate enough to hear him speak a few months ago. And he was hilarious because he talked about being 20 or 30 something year old during that time. And he's like, you know, you kids sit back and complain about things that happen today. It's no way you would have been capable of dealing with the things that we deal with. But in addition, you keep crying about like somebody do something for me and help me. Nobody helped us. We got up and we did it. We didn't know if it was going to fail. We didn't know how it was going to go. We just got up and we started doing. So if you had that level of self-awareness and passion to just begin to mobilize and start somewhere, you'll watch it unfold, because those who have passion and those who have discernment, those who have a good spirit and heart, it'll always work in your favor eventually, even though the road is not easy.
Thank you. You've spoken a lot about leadership qualities, and I think it's been asked in the chat. So I think we've answered that. If there's any other questions about that, we can ask that separately. But coming from the chat again, there's a question asked by Evelyn. Do you have a marketing department? Because as they see, I feel like the Image Awards come on TV, but no other marketing or advertising is put out. With that being said, is there a way that we can help? We can help? I mean, I'm familiar with the social media, and I follow things and the Freedom Fund dinners and things of that. I've seen things on Instagram and Facebook and things. But is there any type of marketing department? How can we help?
So there is no communications team or department. When I tell you there's a party of two, it's a party of two. You guys see, I had to keep my answer on the phone, like, oh my God, stop ringing phone. Like, it's me and it's our admin assist. So you'll notice that on the PowerPoint presentation, I talked about adding a comm staff person. And even then, like, we don't have the resources to hire someone full time. They'll be serving in the space as an independent contractor, but that one person still can't necessarily filter all the needs that we have. We would love to have some support on the communications committee and the public relations committee. Is vital because, again, the NAACP is only as large as members see the need to be. If that makes sense. Like, if you can kind of catch the theme when I'm reading history, when you have the greatest numbers is generally when something was going on and folk knew about it and they wanted to be engaged and feel empowered. And it's really no different. Like, we've seen a huge influx of folk joining around the time of Floyd's murder. And then you have to understand too, there's some vast differences between what you see at nationals with the Image Awards and what you see in the branches. And if we're at 1,500 members and we're the largest in the state of Ohio, then you must know the other branches are really suffering. They're really struggling. So we absolutely could use communications help. Even after we have this one independent contractor, there's tons of things that we would like to increase visibility, to engage users, to help them understand why their membership is so important, what issues we want them to tackle, and also what events are coming down the pipeline. Because it's only me, myself, and Danielle, we don't always have time to put everything on a website. That's also not necessarily my skill or expertise. So when I do it, it's going to be pretty basic. It ain't going to look too great. Like, I run our Facebook, and as you can see, ain't that great. So we would love to have you guys come on board. You have to meet everything when you're working out of a space like this with grace and mercy and patience.
So Crystal, as we continue to work on, especially through our Stand for Racial Justice Alliance Task Force work, we are most recently having conversations about, to Jacques' question about advocacy, how to best help support our students so that they do understand how to advocate. And to your point, it comes in many forms, and we want to be able to express that to our students. So most certainly we'll be reaching out to you. Maybe we can work together somehow for a greater conversation in our community, but of course engaging our students in that space. The other thing I want to ask about is one of the most recent issues that a lot of higher education institutions are facing, in particular community colleges across the country, is this food insecurity among our students. Our students are struggling, as you know, after the pandemic put us into a whole nother, realm of having to transition online and ensuring that our students have the technology that they need, the Wi-Fi. Wanting to make sure too, we want you to meet the needs of our students so that they are successful. And food insecurity seems to be a big one. We did pre-pandemic, started building out some food pantries on our campuses. We have some fabulous facilities on all of our campuses. Unfortunately, we need to increase utilization. There might be a number of factors associated with that, including perhaps a stigma associated with that. So we're working through that and communicating how best engaging our student, to utilize, and of course identifying funds, to engage our community partners like the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, et cetera. So again, we could talk offline. I really would love to be able to pick your brain about, those things. But those are just like one of the things that are on our agenda right now, in addition to so many other things as it pertains to race and social justice matters. So.
No, that's a good one. And it's an important one that it could get lost, right? Like, when I think about food insecurity, I'm not thinking about college students. I don't think most of the community is either, which is why a lot of that work when it was happening was geared toward elementary school and grade school. And like all of a sudden they got those P cards. you can use sort of resources that would normally go to the schools when it was closed during COVID. Actually went to the families, and it was not based off like income or anything. And I think college students are often left out of that conversation. So, I mean, one thing that I'm missing, in addition to missing like having a chair for the college unit, we are missing an education chair, which is actually how Magda and I met. Is really, really critical that we have one, because those are the things that are lost if we don't have someone kind of leading that charge. So we'd love to talk to you offline about some, reactive approaches, but also maybe even some proactive opportunities. So that I think when Obama was in office, this is why he created a unit for pandemics. They were seeing on average pandemics every 2 years. So yeah, the type of pandemic may change. COVID may be one of the most drastic in the last few years, but every 2 years we've been seeing a pandemic. And so figuring out what is the response to college students when we face it may be a better opportunity, so that, you can work on the reactive backside of, a plan if it's not working, but you have something set up. We'd love to help. And we'd love to have one of you think about coming and lead our education committee. I can't see y'all faces, but I know you're there.
Let me see. I think I saw a question in the.
Yeah, it's a good one. Lisa Netta brought a really good point up.
Yeah.
I have a question. Can you guys
Sure.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay, actually, I'm at work and I have to go. I'm in the file room. Did you say that this video will be available later?
Yes.
I said that I can offer this PowerPoint to Magda afterwards. Yeah, I can send it to her in an email.
And not really necessary. I'm just like a person. I just collect stuff. But anyway, I'm very excited. I have to go. I'm actually going downstairs because Fifth Third Bank has a program for people. I work at CHN Housing Network, and many people don't have bank accounts, so they're offering, no cost bank accounts or whatever they're doing. And I'm opening one up for my 20-year-old niece and my 3-year-old niece. And I just want to say goodbye in person. But I also want to say my entire life I've wanted to be a member, and right now that I'm starting to live my dreams at 58, you will be hearing from me, Ms. Bryan, between my side hustles, working and going to school. I cannot live my life without being a member and trying to improve our lives. So I'll be in touch with what I can do. And thank you, Tracy, for having this. And I just want us to do better. And you got me. And one of my side hustles is a professional organizer. So be ready for somebody to be like, okay, that pen should be moved to the left because it's not in. Oh, anyway, I'm just being silly. But I'll just be in contact. And so I just want to say goodbye and thank you. And this was wonderful. So
Thank you, Evelyn. I'm so excited to have you on deck. Believe me.
Thank you. Okay, I'll be in touch. Okay.
Bye-bye.
And you're in Cleveland, right here in Cleveland, right?
Right here on Fair Hill.
I don't know what I'm thinking. It was just international. You call it from Japan or something. Okay.
It's an address in the PowerPoint, so when I share, you'll be able to see it from there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank
Guys, have
you.
a good day. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. I would like to go back real quickly to Lisa Netta's point in our chat. She mentioned that she sees an opportunity for discussion for interns from Tri-C, CSU, and other local colleges in Northeast Ohio, which could benefit everyone, engage members, promoting events. I'm sorry. Promoting events.
Generational learning opportunities.
Thank you. It scrolled up. I'm sorry.
You listed all those things that you need something for. And I was like, we got that. We don't have to go digging far. You have all these colleges that are around. You have dozens of children and, our young adults that are looking for just an opportunity to use what they've learned in the classroom in real life. And under great guidance, you all can build a great team with the partnerships with these institutions. I just think that will be a really good start to a conversation to get them in action.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that. So that is a fabulous idea. Note that April 2nd will make a year for me. So a part of it was really just kicking some dust, getting some things properly in order, getting our planning started about where we are even trying to be. Because it's hard to make an ask if you don't know where you're trying to go. What am I asking you for, right? And then I sound ridiculous when I'm in front of you, and nobody wants a ridiculous leader. Nobody's going to follow you anywhere. So interestingly enough, we have a really good partnership with the Social Justice Institute over a case. Aisha Bell Hardaway kind of wrote a grant that calls for fellows to come in, and she lists organizations that make them applicable to get the fellowship or the fellow from them. So they allow you to create your own job description, and I'm working on one right now, and then I'm going to look at having interns come under that person, all in regards to a Black voter initiative. Because that's what we really, really need at this moment. Not only is our turnout consistently low, but our voters in Cleveland are actually not apathetic. I think Magda kind of introduced the fact that I serve as co-founder of an organization called Cleveland Votes. We did some research this year. We commissioned some research that came back. We don't have apathetic voters. We have distrustful voters. And so some core things that we had back in the 50s and 60s that really just don't exist anymore, we want to be able to re-implement them. And I want to trust the student body to do it, interns to do it, because I don't have the capability to have staff. But I really believe that, a college fellow at Case and other volunteers can absolutely lead this and blow it out of the water. Looking at how we endorse candidates, what type of questions we ask around Black issues, Black-led issues, how they plan on supporting them and actually operationalizing them, kind of rating and going back and looking at their efforts throughout the time in which they are actually in seats in offices, door knocking. So most folk told us in that report that we don't trust social media. They understand algorithms. They trust their neighbors too to tell them what's happening and what's going on. And the only people that go out and talk about what's happening in community are partisan politics. Do community trust partisan politics? No, I don't blame them. They want to hear from their neighbor. They want to hear from institutions who have been ingrained in the process and understand what we need as a community. And so we're looking at right now, sorry for the long drawn out comment, but we're absolutely looking at that for a first opportunity. And I just keep thinking about when Stanley Miller passed away, and so many people that are like my age now, like had so many great things to say about him being the first person to ever give them an opportunity or afford them an opportunity in leadership or working in youth council. And we want to be able to do the same thing. So we definitely want to put Sankofa into practice. You reach back, you pull up, and certainly never undermining the brilliance of our youth, who has clear eyes and, feel optimistic about everything and haven't been hit sometimes with all the burdens that we face when you do the work for a long time. So thank you for that. And we love to have you come on board so you can help us implement some of those strategies you just talked about. Don't try to get away. I see your picture and your name.
Thank you. And and even as you were speaking, it made me also think about, we have a lot of youth organization partnerships. And because I believe if we get I call them babies, the babies early, it becomes common for them and they'll start to pick up fact from fiction and what it's going to take to make the world a better place. So I'm even thinking, not forget college, but let's reach down even into those high schools and those junior high, so they can at least be exposed early. And then that can help them look at a whole nother mindset about a possibility of a career path that they never would have thought of because they had never been exposed to this type of work. So
absolutely. So our youth council takes the younger members. The 5 or 6 members that we do have are actually middle schoolers that'll be participating in the strategic planning process. So that's a great idea. But we're looking at like 5 people when we really should be looking at like at least 30 students that can really invest in this. So those are great ideas. We just need the capacity to be able to get out there and get the word out and have members join and get their kids engaged.
I'll just say I was a part of the youth council when I was a little boy with Jocelyn when I was younger, and my children were as well. So it really helped me in molding me, traveled and everything. So definitely. One quick question in the chat. We have a student who's an international student. Can an international student be a part of the group?
Absolutely. So what is the newest part of this is our international affairs committees. We actually never had one in the history of the branch until the last 6 months. It's actually led by a gentleman from Ghana by the name of Kwame Bachwe, and he's the person that is responsible for spearheading alongside me the state of the Black diaspora. So I didn't get into detail about what that means, but it's really, we'll never have the numbers in the United States, just to be clear, right? I told you I'm a transparent person. And so you have to have some international connectivity. We kind of need each other and to talk about what the issues are, what the the diaspora. And I also talk about utilizing some of the Kwanzaa principles. How do we use cooperative economics to build each other up and invest in some things? We want a gentleman from Senegal to come over, amongst other people who used to live here in Cleveland. So we would love to have you on our International Affairs Committee. Every unit does not have that. There are only a few. DC has one. So super excited to have you on board if that is your interest, or many of the other interest areas that we kind of named off today on the call.
Great. And thank you for that. I'm going to wrap up the questions with actually two. I'm going to combine two that were sent in previously. How is the NAACP, Cleveland NAACP, planning to work or working currently with the newly elected mayor? And then the final question would be, what's next for the NAACP? We spoke about how people can be involved, but what's next for the NAACP, and how are you working with the newly elected mayor?
So I think the interesting thing about the newly elected mayor, we're fortunate in our individual capacities and hats. Dale and I, that we both supported his campaign, and he's a really good friend. But I think what you have to be cautious of is no one person is going to come in and fix anything for you. And if you're a resident of the city of Cleveland or have any level of involvement in politics, you definitely know everything takes time. I'm not kidding. I spent 18 years of my life in government, meet everything with grace and mercy for folk that's trying to overturn and change things that's been in place for a very long time. And so our partnership, what we do right now is trying to keep folk engaged. So we're inviting him to our kickoff. We're keeping him apprised of Freedom Fund dinners and opportunities to learn. But until that plan comes down the pipeline and we have these positions filled, actively hiring, we actually interviewed 4 policy strategists today, there's nothing to ask for yet. You have to know your ask. And I think that's one of the deficits in our community. We often are reaching to jump and be seen and heard, and then it results in nothing because you don't know what you're jumping and asking for. Patience. And so it requires patience to rebuild anything. And once we have this agenda, then we can know how to meet our mayor with, hey, these are our policy acts. How can your prosecutors sit down with us and speak to us about how you want to do this? How can your council sit down with us? So having that good relationship right now with Councilman Griffin, who's now council president, and our mayor are critical and key, and keeping them advised that we are present and working hard to create this strategy. And then finally, when we have it, that's when you meet them with some negotiation tactics and making some ask. Oh, and you asked what was next, right? Next? Sorry. Yes. Sorry. Mm-hmm. And I know, my apologies, because it wasn't really clear in the presentation. I'm just trying to get out a whole bunch at one time. But when I kind of listed out those events about the State of the Black Diaspora, or the Accountability Roundtable, or the Wealth Building Forum, none of those things exist here. Those aren't things that this NAACP have done, as far as I know, at least in the last 20 years. And so these are things that will be new, and we'll be able to legacy build off of them. Each time we do it, we'll get better. And so those are the things from a programmatic standpoint that we want to be able to bring in, again, because this is all about proactive opportunity, the ability to thrive without asking other folk. And then, we always have a slew of things that our committees want to do. So as they build out their strategies and tactics too, that won't necessarily come directly from branch staff, but that will come from the branch as a direct result of our volunteers. And we won't have any of those things till May. So I would just ask, again, this is a prime time to get involved. You're actually, if you join now, you may still be involved in the actual process of strategic planning, and also just putting your voice in about what you would like to see, and then putting your efforts in to operationalize the movement. So I would love to tell you very hard and concrete things, but they just don't exist, and I don't believe in lying to you either. We're getting there, and we're working hard to see something different and a change.
Thank you. Is there any other questions real quick? We're about to wrap up here. Is there any other questions that someone would like to share or ask at this time? Well, Crystal, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been amazing, everything that you've been able to share with us. And we thank you so much for everything on behalf of the Cleveland branch of the NAACP. You've really given us a lot of insight, a lot of inspiration, and I thank you personally and on behalf of Cuyahoga Community College. And we would like to thank everyone who joined us today. Again, this session is brought to you by the Black American Council, the Black Caucus, Stanford Racial Justice Alliance, and the Department of Diversity and Inclusion here at Cuyahoga Community College. This presentation has been recorded, and we will provide this with you along with the PowerPoint from Crystal to share for additional information and for you to see at a later date. So again, thank you for your time, and please enjoy the rest of your day.
It's been a pleasure, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Crystal.